Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics.
You're doing it wrong.
I know. That was on purpose, though.
It's gonna be, hi Ben.
Hi, Carl.
I gotta shake you out of your old ways.
You got to shake me out of my old ways. Wow. How you doing, Carl? How's it going?
I'm good. It has been very cold here. We were talking about this before we hit record. We got some snow, not a crazy amount of snow here in Pennsylvania, but enough snow and cold enough temperatures that we had a snow day yesterday. So my daughter was home and going stir crazy all day and had a 2 hour delay this morning. So my whole week is all garbled up, but
Oh,
getting back on.
man. Semi bummer, I guess. But maybe you guys got to play in the snow a little bit. Do you like snowmen? Anything like that?
We
Snow people?
didn't actually. It was just honestly, it was just a little bit too cold because it was like this morning. It was 15 degrees out, like Fahrenheit, and
Wow.
which I think is like -10 Celsius.
That that
And
that sounds about right.
yeah, it was too gross. And I think it was yeah, it would have been a little rough for the kiddo to be out there. She would have loved it. She would have had a great time, but she definitely would have had all of her fingers and toes fall off. 'Cause she hates wearing coats. She's at that age where she like hates putting coats on. She wanted to wear Crocs to school this morning, and I'm like, it's 15 degrees out. You're not wearing Crocs and no socks, you crazy person.
That's when you lay down the law. When I was growing up, we'd go skiing in like Vermont or like Massachusetts, and it would be like I remember we'd always go like in January, and it would be like I don't know, sometimes like -30 Fahrenheit. Like it would be like insane, and like my fingers would fall off basically without falling off. The equivalent of almost falling off, whatever that is. Yeah,
But would that have made you a better bass player? Like, would you have like if you lost one of your fingers
yeah.
on your left? Because you're a righty, right?
I'm right-handed.
So if you would have lost hypothetically here, bear with me. If you lost one of your fingers on your left hand, I imagine at first that would have been an obstacle, but I feel like it would make you train the other fingers even better, and you would be somehow become some kind of like
Yeah, it's
crazy.
like isn't that like what not Wes Montgomery. Was it Wes Montgomery who had that? There's another guitarist. There's like a famous guitarist. Oh,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Django. Um, but James Jamerson, the famous bass player from Motown, even though he had all of his digits, like he's famous for his like hook. Like he would only use his pointer finger to play bass. And I was actually listening to an interesting interview with Michael Leake from Snarky Puppy. I don't know if you're into that stuff, but I super like Snarky Puppy. And he was saying like it's just like a totally different feel if you play with one finger versus two. It's like almost like if a drummer, like if you're doing like two hands playing the hi hat versus one hand, like that R&B thing. It's like the difference between disco and R&B, right? It's like a completely different feel groove. So like in terms of like the right hand technique, I think there's even more to be said about that
Yeah.
potentially. Anyways, we digress.
Yes. Anyway, sorry. I'm sorry about the hypotheticals.
No, it's so good. We got a little bit of pre-episode banter going, I guess. This is how it works when you have a co-host. The topic is accepting criticism from your peers, people you're working with, whoever it might be. I think everybody hits a point in their music career where they're kind of like, you are served, and your ego gets completely squashed by people telling you didn't do this well, or you need to improve this, or something like that. So I guess the question is like, or the topic is, how do you accept that, when maybe mindsets that you can shift towards to better receive criticism and not let it completely deflate your ego. That's the topic. What do you think?
I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts about everything, I guess, but about this specifically, I think maybe I have a lot of thoughts about it because I have a lot of practice.
Yes.
I'll, when I say being criticized, that has a bit of a negative connotation that I don't think we're talking about, right? We are talking about well, hopefully getting constructive criticism, or at least doing things and setting expectations and asking for criticism in a way that sets you up to receive constructive criticism, right? Being
Yeah.
specific about what you're getting thoughts about and the reason behind it. So my first thought really is maybe a more of an example and something that I see all the time, and I'm sure anybody listening has seen this endless times, either on Facebook music groups or on Reddit or somewhere like that. but somebody will post their song, like an unfinished demo or a finished demo or a finished recording or whatever, and they'll just post a link to it and say, "Hey, here's a song I'm working on. Let me know what you think." And unsurprisingly, people will either just say, "That's cool," and have it be a completely meaningless positive
Response.
response,
Yeah.
or they'll point out a whole bunch of things that they noticed
Rip them
they
to
don't like.
pieces, rip them to
Yeah,
shreds.
but none of it is beneficial. And the reason that I say that it's not beneficial is even if the person giving the criticism is well intended and educated and like giving thoughtful things that he or she thinks will make it better, if they don't know the context of what the goal of that song is or what stage it's in and why that person is looking for a response and for feedback, then their response is irrelevant. Even well-intended constructive criticism is irrelevant if it's given without understanding the deeper context of why the person is asking for the criticism in the first place.
Yeah. It seems like also
So
just like a crazy move to kind of just like, you know, throw your work up there for people to just scrutinize without any context, without any like, it's like, what? Why would you do that? Like, I mean, not to derail this person, not to be too harsh on this person, but um, probably better to choose wisely who you want to share it with. Hopefully, I mean, maybe they don't have a circle of people that they trust to share this with, which might be another issue and something to think about. But like building a little cohort of friends, peers that can help you like listen to your music would be a better way to go about doing that, I think, than just putting things up there on a big Facebook group.
I agree fully. And I think what I've seen is that the people that do that are generally pretty green, right? They're
Yes,
pretty new to it. And I think what it is they haven't had enough experiences getting burned by Facebook
people.
criticism. Yeah, I think that's it. I think they just haven't had that experience yet, so they don't understand the value of building that team or that circle of people that you trust. And I don't know if I don't know how connected this is to the original topic, but something I'd love to maybe I look at as an extension of the topic of receiving criticism. It's how to figure out who your circle should be. Like, how do you form that circle of trusted people to get criticism from? Because I feel like that's a huge part of getting meaningful feedback is meaningfully asking for
Yeah,
the feedback, and whether
yeah,
that's how you say it, how you phrase it, or who you ask in the first place. So who's your
yeah.
circle? Like, do you have a circle? Like, who's your circle?
Who's my circle? Yeah, I think my circle. I'll tell you. I mean, at this point, I really rely on my mastering engineer to kind of give me mixed feedback because I feel like that's kind of the point where I lose my objectivity. And thankfully, my mastering engineer is there to kind of say, "Oh no, it's great," or "Yeah, maybe you could do this with the kick drum a little bit," or whatever it is. And that kind of gives me that kind of like, oh, takes me out of like the trees and back to the forest sort of moment. So for me, that's a big part of it. And also, friends. I have like cohorts here also in Jerusalem that I'll share music with. And through the podcast, I've met some wonderful people that I'm in touch with and will randomly share stuff with, and they'll share stuff with me. And I also have people that ask me for questions and send me music, and it's usually people that are either peers or a little bit below, a couple rungs below me in this journey of music and audio. Um, and I'm always happy to give feedback when I can, because it's like I love it when people give me the feedback, and I love giving people feedback, and it's kind of this symbiotic passing the baton on sort of thing, which helps everybody, get better as we go along in this journey. So yeah, I definitely have people that I send music to.
So my question then, I guess, to follow up with that, you don't have to necessarily like name the specific people, but what are the characteristics in a confidant that you look for? Like, what are the things about the people that you trust to get feedback from? Like, what are those? What characteristics do they have that makes you say, "Oh, I trust this person's uh this person's feedback. I trust their opinion, and I also trust the way that they give feedback."
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm thinking specifically about my mastering engineer now because I just got a track back from him today. But like, and shout out to Connor. Uh, yeah, I just like I know he's listened to more music than I have, or he's listening to more music on a daily basis than me because he's a mastering engineer, and I'm working on one song while he's doing like 10, you know? Um, and so, and he's just objective. He's not invested in, the project until that moment. He's kind of coming at it with totally fresh ears and with that experience of listening to lots of music. So that really helps me get confidence. Uh, and the other thing, yeah, is just like people that I, you know, I know they're not going to like rip into me as like on a personal level. I know it's just like going to give me constructive feedback only in a way to, want me to do better and help me. And with, they still have my back. It's not like, you know, a troll on the internet who's going to just like, try to dismantle my whole sense of confidence in this endeavor. Yeah. So people, I guess that I know they have they're my back. I know I could rely on them for actual real feedback, constructive feedback, and also like that's coming from a place of goodwill and not, malice, so to speak. How about you, Carl?
Well, I'd have to say, I'd say, yeah, I think to say that my mastering engineer gives me really great feedback is, not me being very novel here, because
Yeah,
I'm not trying not to steal your answer, but
it's a
you
good
know,
answer.
yeah, friend of the show, Nicholas DeLorenzo.
He's actually the person that put us in touch. I think he's our
Yeah,
connector.
I
And
think he is.
Carl, we met. My wife wanted me to bring this up that we actually met through the podcast. It's crazy that like you're the co-host and like we only met because of this podcast. And Nick is actually the person that put us in touch. So shout out to Nick.
Yeah, you think that after all this time you would have realized that I'm just full of shit and that you should you shouldn't talk to me or listen to me. And now you've invited me into your home like a vampire.
Yeah, exactly.
I have different people that I ask for different types of feedback from. So yeah, like Nicholas, like I'll ask him for the pre-mastering mix feedback, and it's usually very specific and very technical, right? Like it's like do a low pass or do a high pass at 26 hertz with a 6 dB shelf on the kick drum, like those kind of notes,
Wow.
which is great and super helpful. But also there are people that I try to just get, either mix notes about or just general, like, this style more than I do. Like what sticks out as weird,
Yeah.
like what feels authentic and what doesn't feel authentic. And then I have to ask myself to like, okay, if something doesn't feel authentic to that style, is that an artistic choice or is that something that I need to fix and do better? Right? Is
Nice.
that a quirk about the artist and the song where they're trying to tie in other genre influences, or is it something that I just missed the mark on? Um, and I also sometimes I haven't done this as much recently, but for a long time, especially when I was kind of getting started, I would also ask people that I knew didn't know anything about production of music
Mm,
because I would just want them to give me their thoughts as a listener. Like, was anything distracting? Like, did anything stick out to them? Because if something sticks out to someone that doesn't know production,
yeah.
there's an issue. Um, so that there is value in that too. I know my
Yeah.
wife, I love her dearly, but she used to just get so frustrated and not frustrated. She'd get annoyed with me for always wanting her to listen to songs that I worked on because I'm into, you know, high energy electronic pop, and pop adjacent stuff. And if she could just listen to nothing but Bob Dylan and the band
I love it.
and nothing after like 1978,
My guess was
then
going to be James Taylor based on how you set that up, but in the ballpark, I
uh
guess.
not as much. But yeah, but if we so yeah, musically, like she doesn't naturally enjoy the kind of music that I make anyway, which
Hmm.
is fine, and that's great. But because of that, it's she doesn't know anything about production, and also doesn't really know anything about the styles either. So as a
Yeah.
listener, she
Super,
doesn't.
super like, yeah, objective because she doesn't have any, yeah. She
Yeah, she has no
doesn't have the
opinion.
knowledge, insight, or what's the word? Predisposed disposition to like or dislike something based on something. I'm not making any sense. I'm sort of rambling, but
No, no, no,
I
no,
think
no.
you understand what I'm saying.
Totally, totally. Yeah. So I mean, like over the years, I've sent stuff to. I think I've sent some stuff to like Matt Huber just to like get thoughts. Andrew Murray, people that I've always looked up to and have met that I really trust their ears. And now having having management, like being able to send David stuff to listen to has been really great, especially when it's more of like the pop punk sort of leaning stuff, because that's what he's really into as a listener. Yeah, so depending on the style that I'm working on, depending on the artist, I might have different people that I'll ship it off to and ask their thoughts. But
Yeah.
either way, it's the same kind of characteristics like you were saying, where it's a person that I know is going to listen with care and is aware of why I'm asking them in the first place,
Yeah. That's great.
which comes down to me being selective about who I send it to, but also me being selective about how I present it and not just say, "Hey, here's a song. Can you tell me what you think?" It's like, "Hey, this uh this mix is like 99% there. I feel like something might be off, but I can't tell what. And I think I've just heard it too many times. Is there anything that's like jumping out at you as objectively weird? Or are there any things that are like subjectively weird that you feel may or may not be working? But like giving that or saying, hey, this is like not mixed yet. This is an early production, but I just feel like the bridge is unnecessary. Do you think this is potential, or do you think that I
I'm
should
right.
just make it
Yeah.
short and sweet?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's I think the more practice you get at asking for specific criticism and providing context, and the more experience you get at getting unhelpful criticism, I think the combination of those two things, I think, is what's going to really help to train you to be able to not just get feedback more constructively and be able to take it better, but also, like you were saying, giving the feedback and giving the criticism
Yeah.
in a much more constructive way.
Yeah. It's making me think of I had an experience over the summer. Um, I was mixing a record and had there. I have a friend whose parents live in my neighborhood, and he was like visiting, and he came just to hang out. I was like, "Oh, check out this mix I'm working on," and he's like, "Oh, that's cool, that's cool." And then like once the vocal started, he's like, "I'm out." I was like, "Oh, what was it?" And we were basically struggling to get this song to work, and it was like a New Orleans kind of a vibe. And the issue was that like he was singing the verse like way too low and just by himself. And him kind of like expressing to me in the room was so helpful because it's like I knew that something was wrong, but I couldn't like articulate why it was wrong. And
Mm.
that kind of led me spiraling and figuring out, no, this needs a gang vocal. And we ended up getting a gang vocal, and it completely changed the song and made it awesome. From like the chorus always sounded good because it was like higher in his register and it was working, but like um but yeah, but it was a cool track. It was kind of like a Jewish New Orleans what's the name of that the genre, two-step kind of a thing. It was dope.
Is it offensive to say Jew Orleans?
New Orleans. Hey man, I got New Orleans roots. This is my grandfather was born in New Orleans. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah. Jewish Creoles, baby. Or can I say
Hey,
that? Is that allowed? I
we'll
guess
let God decide.
we're not Creoles. We're Jews. We're Jews from Moldova who landed in New Orleans. So, I apologize if I offended anybody.
It would have been my fault anyway. I started it. Um, do you have any memories of times that you were given, I guess, like well intended but completely unhelpful feedback? Like not just like a straight up like troll response. Like this is garbage, your voice is terrible. Like not something like that, but something that where they were thoughtful but completely missed the mark as far as what the artist was going for.
Well, I could give you. I've told this story on the podcast before, but I made a record in 2013, and I sent the files to the mastering engineer here in Israel to master them. And he kind of said, like, listen, like, again, I was newer in the job, you know, like I didn't have the years of experience that I have now. I was, and I was also very afraid of what this person was going to say about my mixes and my productions and stuff. And he said, "Oh, it sounds great, but like the kick and the bass could be done better. Why don't you send me the kick and the bass. This is a whole other conversation. Stems, right? As stems separate, and then the rest of the mix by itself, and then I'll make it all happen in the mastering process. And I was like, okay, you're the mastering engineer, sure. And I sent him all the stuff, and then what he sent me back was just completely not what I wanted. And in retrospect, he made it punchier and stuff like that, but that's not the vibe I was going for. I was going for I was going for like warm and kind of you know tubby low end, not sort of punchy, clicky low, kicks kind of stuff. And he was trying to be helpful, and he made a great point about my mixing, which was not up to par. But nevertheless, it was now a record that I didn't want and that I didn't intend to make, because he had asked for that kind of the stems of the bass and the kick separate from the rest of the mix. And like I already knew at that time, like, oh, they're all going into the same bus compressor, maybe this will change things or whatever. But I wasn't aware that it would just change like the entire tone of the record to that extent. And I was like super disappointed. And we ended up just using my mixes. I went back, I sat with him, we mastered it. He's like, it's boomy. I'm like, but this is my record and this is how I want it to sound. You know what I mean? And I had to go with my internal compass there. And that was a really big learning moment for me on so many levels, because I bought Bob Katz's mastering book. I learned all about it. I obsessed. But yeah, anyways, the criticism was probably good, but it's not what I needed to hear then. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it wasn't within the context of what the artist wanted and what you wanted.
Yes. Well, I was the artist. Yeah.
Oh, it was like your solo.
It was actually like, yeah, a solo record of mine.
Yeah. So
Don't listen to it. I think the songs are good, but the songs hold up. I
but
think.
don't listen to it. Yeah,
But don't. No, listen.
Hold on, I'm proud of it. It was an important time of my life, but yeah, don't listen to it.
I'm semi proud of it. If you want, check it out, and I'll accept your criticism, because I have 11 years after that under my belt. So bring what may.
Okay. So that actually was an unintended little pivot. My question then is, how late in the process is criticism beneficial? Because I know, obviously, you were not saying, yeah, give me the criticism on, this song that came out 11 years ago, because you were going to actually do anything with it, right? It's too late to do anything with it.
Yes.
So do you have a threshold or a landmark in the process that you feel is too late for any meaningful criticism?
Yeah, because it's done. It's shipped. But now, if I'm working on something and I trust the person who's giving me criticism, then I'll definitely hear something out so that I can maybe get a better product. And that's different than like a record I released 11 years ago, and now someone just like rips me a new one because of a song that I made when I had less skills.
Well, I could say that, because I'd say for me, it's, once the song is done, or at least like once it's been uploaded for distribution, for sure, then yeah, I know it's not going to be doing too much good unless the feedback is specifically related to what I could do better next time.
Yeah.
If there was something that I could learn from it. But again, that comes down to, how do I ask for that? Who do I ask for that feedback from? And how do I explain to them that, hey, this is done, this is going to be released, in 6 weeks, whatever. But if there are things that you think I could do better, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Some of them, maybe I could have done better. Some of the things may have been an artistic choice that, the artist wanted the bass to be as loud as it is, even though I didn't agree with it. And I made my argument, but they, it's their song, and they kind of can beat it with that.
Of course.
So if, when they tell me that the bass was too loud, I could be like, thank you, I'm not crazy, but at the same time, like, that wouldn't affect my choices in the future.
Right.
It's so do you, who do you ask? Do you have anybody that you ask for feedback from after a song is done?
Yeah. So at that point, I think I'm asking friends and like my bandmates, people that like I trust their taste, just to kind of say like, hey, did we do a good job on this? And I usually can tell before I show it to them if they're going to like it or not based on how well I know their, their tastes or whatever. And maybe that's like even a good indicator. It's like drawing I was thinking about this as we were talking, like having like your friend avatar, like listening over your shoulder while you're recording or mixing or something. Be like, would my buddy like, you know, Dan think this is cool? Like he probably would. Let's keep going, or like, this is lame. Let's start over. That could be like a cool idea to think about while you're working on a song. Um, but yeah, like I kind of can already tell before I show these friends what they're going to think about it. And if I think that, I'll show it to them knowing they're going to like it, or the other way around. If I know they're not going to like it, I probably wouldn't show them because it wouldn't be very helpful or meaningful. Uh, but just to like give me like a boost of confidence almost to be like, you're doing good work. Like keep at it. How about you?
Well, I was gonna say I want to follow up on that and ask you then how much of an influence, like if you were to take, if you were to ask yourself, I wonder what Dan thinks of this, would Dan like this? And if so,
I
keep
was
going.
just trying to think of a name,
I know, but I'm saying, but like hypothetically, I guess that does raise the question of how do we balance what we think is right versus what we think the artist wants versus what we think, the end listener wants. I know that's kind of a big rhetorical question, but you did bring up that idea of like, having these other people's opinions in mind when making decisions. And I'm
I would
curious,
say tastes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, how much does that influence your taste and how much does your taste influence the decisions?
I don't think I've done this experiment yet on myself. I'm usually following my own taste when I'm producing or mixing, barring what I know the client wants. Like it's the client's song. Dan's not coming into this session usually because I'm usually helping other people. Um, and other than my own taste and following my own intuitions, it's usually about you know anything the artist might have primed me towards or against. You know, so or so yeah, it's kind of like I know this artist is usually with like mixing, it's my own gut because the song kind of just tells you where it needs to go, and they're trusting your taste and your ears to bring it to fruition. But I thought I heard a noise. Um, but yeah, like in production, it's like often it's like I'm following my gut, but I'm also like there with the artist and trying to help them create their vision. And so yeah, the artist is definitely high in the mind all the time.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, yeah, totally. I think my experience with I think is a bit different because of the styles of music that I work on. Because I do a lot of, mostly pop and pop adjacent stuff. So a lot of times I'll have an artist that will say something along the lines of, I want to make sure that this song like feels like it fits on such and such playlist, or
Mm,
it stands up alongside X, Y, and Z artists.
right,
So it is to some degree, it is the artist's vision and expectation and their like desire for where they want the song to be, but that the way they describe it is based on an outside influence.
right. I feel like
And
in like
whether
the pop world, there's just like there's just more posing and more like there's like there's more of the comparison game. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah, it's interesting. And I feel like the more confident the artist is, the less of that there is.
right, as there probably should be, right?
Yeah. That's not always the case,
Hmm.
obviously, but that's
Interesting.
fairly indicative, and I mean, at the same time, though, like that is just the reality of that style. Like if the purpose of making pop music is different from the purpose of making soul music, is different from the purpose of making deathcore. It's different from the purpose of making, film scores, whatever it is. Like there's no right or wrong
Of
to it,
course.
but
Yeah.
that is you know a genre specific, or at least like there are the nuances of those considerations are kind of specific to the audience, and I guess therefore the genre.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, yeah, especially like once you're like going for like top 40 style stuff, and you really want to be charting, and then you really need to like compare like luffs with with what's charting, and you have to compare like kick drums to like popular kick drums, all these things. You just have to get really into the weeds of what's popular right now, and there's a lot more referencing of current mixes, and yeah, that's I totally get that.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on the ultimate goal of the song and the ultimate goal of the artist's career, I guess. If you want to make a career as, or if the artist wants to make a career as a, folk singer, then the listener's expectations of what that means is very different from somebody that wants to be a, big pop artist or in a successful metal band. Those are all, there are different expectations from the artist that th- those artists have to play for, and make decisions based on.
Right, because they're showing their friends the same way we
Yeah.
show our friends.
And not saying that every decision needs to be made with the purpose of doing exactly what that audience expects, right? There could be a lot of things where they're meeting some expectations in order to surprise them in other ways, but it's always a consideration.
Yeah. I want to kind of shift the conversation a little bit, if that's okay, to receiving criticism from clients, because I feel like that's kind of like what I thought we were going to talk about, even though this has been a great like kind of different way of doing criticism. Um, I want to know, Carl, was there a time in your career that an artist uh, was really critical of work you did that kind of changed your perception about something? And like was like a seismic that's not the word. It was like a
Seismic?
seismic. It was like a seismic shift in how you perceive client relationships, and just receiving criticism from your clients in general.
One that sticks out to me, I forget the artist's name. I mean, I wouldn't have said it in the podcast anyway, but I genuinely can't remember what the name was. Um, I was hired to do a mix. I was recommended by someone that I work with kind of regularly, and they sent me the mix. They sent me the references, and it was all like right up my alley. Like it was like early Kid Cudi kind of like hip hop pop influence, like that like a Pharrell production kind of vibe where it's like it
Hmm.
definitely rooted in hip hop, but also the pop the pop influence was very strong. And I was like, this is exactly I know exactly where this wants to go. Like based on everything I'm hearing, this is exactly what I know where this is going to go.
You follow the music.
Follow the music, and it was one of the most proud mixes I've ever done. I sent it to him, and the list of revisions was 3 pages long. And I would say, I don't want to say that all of them I disagreed with, but I would say conservatively, probably 80% of the notes I thought were actively going to make the song worse. And I started going through them, tried doing a few, and I, what the artist wanted just felt like, oh no, like this is not what I get. This is so, I'm so far off the page. I just responded and said, "Hey, I don't think I'm the right person for this. I feel like I don't agree with these notes. I'm just going to send you your deposit back because I feel like you should find somebody
Uh,
else that I think sees this vision because what I thought you wanted is very different than what you're telling me now." And I just was like, I'll take responsibility for it. Here's your money. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not going to be a jerk and fight about
that's
it, but also,
the upstanding method.
but also it wasn't something where he gave a bunch of notes. And they were right. They were just a lot of notes. Like when so many of them I thought were actively making the song, like getting in the way of what I thought was an incredible song. And I just had to do that. But that was, I think, the seismic event of that wasn't like a negative feeling, but it made me realize that I need to dig even deeper and making sure that I really understand what the vision is. And that was a moment that kind of sparked me to consistently ask more and more and more and more questions for every potential client. Like I ask a ridiculous amount of questions, and you know what? I have no regrets about that because it is so worth it in the long run, rather than just salivating because a client wants to work with me. Like, of course, I'm just going to say yes and make it work. Like that those days are long gone. But that was a big shift for me, and it wasn't a matter of getting hurt by the criticism. It was more of a realization that my my understanding of what the expectations were and what the goal was so far off, and
Yeah,
I have no one to blame but myself.
that's crazy. I feel like that's like totally a really great takeaway from from that interaction. I'm curious why you didn't ask this client like for that information after that mix, as opposed to saying, forget these notes. Like I think I missed the ball. On what you're actually going for. Maybe let's talk about like what you're actually going for, and maybe I could reapproach it.
I If I remember correctly, I did. Like, I tried to, like, have that conversation, but it just seemed like, if I remember correctly, to actually, no, no, it's all coming back. Um, it was also
This
that,
is therapy right here.
yeah, no, I forgot about this. So, no, no, so the thing that made me go that route was that it was also very, I wanna say aggressive isn't the right word, but, like,
Yeah,
it was not a it wasn't presented in a positive light, like, "Hey, like, here, here's a bunch of things that I think could make this that are gonna get it closer to my vision." It was like, "This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is bad." Like, it was just, like, the way it was presented that I also didn't want to just deal with that kind of a person.
understood.
I think
Yeah,
that was I kind of forgot. Maybe I just, repressed that into the back of my brain, but, yeah, I think that was why I was just like, "Nope, here's your money," and that it took a long time for me to be able to take the high road. I can't remember any at the moment that of times where I didn't take the high road, but I'm sure there were countless times where I just got upset and offended, and either I don't think I ever really responded back negatively. My tendency is more so like self-loathing and just thinking that I'm shit
yeah,
at anything or whatever, and thinking that, like, it's all my fault and that I'm hopeless and
of course.
I should quit. That's usually that's more my instinct than to get up in arms and get pissy with them.
Yeah, same. Same. By the way.
Yeah, you don't strike me as the get angry type.
Yeah. Well, I think I kind of learned a lot of these lessons, and this is kind of something I was thinking to talk about when we started this podcast episode. Was I learned a lot of these lessons in a band. You know what I mean? Like with other musicians, and taking tough criticism from bandmates. Like not even necessarily in the studio. Like just like how I'm playing, or business decisions from the band and stuff like that, and just like being put in my place a couple of times. You know, really caused me to kind of realize that it's not like a personal offense. It's just like trying to make the whole thing better, and that you know slowly growing thick skin because of those interactions, and that thing. And now it doesn't mean that you want to build up such thick skin that you become lifeless and don't have feelings. But I think when you start to receive criticism, like like you're being too busy, or you know or, you know you just have to work on your rhythm a little bit more, like you got to tighten up, whatever it is that the criticism might have been. When you get enough of that stuff and you internalize, like, hey, we're just trying to make everything better, this is like a team project, and you're an integral part of that project, and you improving improves everybody. Over time you kind of like learn that, hey, this is for everyone's own good, and it's not a personal affront. And so like getting reps of receiving criticism and building up that thick skin has like enabled me to kind of like in the studio almost always just be like, okay, like how can we get to your vision faster? I like being open to criticism, being open to mixed revisions. That's been like a big part of how I work. It's just like, great, mixed revisions are great. We're gonna make your song better, you know?
Yeah.
And so I don't think I've maybe taken the low road or felt like taking the low road a couple times, but it usually wasn't because of like criticism of how I was working. It was usually because of other extraneous issues.
Yeah. I think the best part about having management is not the management part. It's that if I want to complain and just be a grumpy asshole, I can just call David and
Yeah,
be like, "Ah," and I can take the low road with him.
right.
you know,
I love that.
he's like, I can commiserate, and he can be like, okay, then I'll be able to like I get it all out of my system, and then we can respond
Yeah,
in a
and
high road fashion.
that's also something that friends can be for, right there for you, right? Like you can like bitch to your friends, right? Like get a beer with your best friend and like complain about your stupid clients, but don't bitch to your clients.
Yeah, it was funny you say that because right before we got on this call, my good friend and I believe friend of the show also, Lucas Gino, he
Hey,
and I were talking
yes,
on the
for
phone.
sure.
And like right before we were gonna get off the phone, he was like, "Oh, before we go, anything you want to bitch about? Like anything you want to get off your chest? You need to commiserate about? Like I'm all ears." So like you're right, like having friends that also get it and know that when you say it, it's just venting steam, not how you actually feel.
Yeah. And so I'd say at this point in our lives, we're pretty good at receiving criticism, I guess overall, right?
I guess being married has a hand in that. But
Well,
I'm ching marriage joke. No, no. I think I think in all seriousness though, I think like getting older, having more experience, having more people in your life that feel comfortable giving you criticism. I think that does that does help.
whether it's your
Um,
wife or anyone else.
yeah,
Yeah. I think we started this conversation. You said something about putting in the like about like just experience with it, and I think that's really it. You're gonna have to if you're going to be a professional, you have to become comfortable with receiving criticism. Not everyone's going to like everything you do, and that doesn't. It's not a personal affront. It's just specific to that artist slash client's work, and you're there to facilitate that and like get over it, internalize it, and make better work because of that. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Like it's in summary.
yeah. No, I fully agree. I fully agree. It comes down to a question of, are these criticisms a reflection of me as a person, or just in technical choices or creative choices that I've made? Right. And when you look at it that way and you can separate that, that enables you to build that, to build those calluses. Because if you think that it's a reflection on me as a person, that's a dangerous way to be.
Yeah,
But when you look at it as, oh, this is just a criticism of the choice that I made, the decision that I made, then you can separate it from your being, from your person, and learn from it.
yeah. I think also because a lot of us who are in audio come from a musical background, I think music often gets tied up with uh, self identification. And then when someone criticizes like work in music that we did, we just immediately say, like, oh, I am shit. You know, it
Yeah.
becomes personalized so quickly. And then you just need to like do enough work to realize that it's not.
Yeah, it's like the music will always be an expression of you, but it's an expression of that moment. It's not an expression of the totality of you. And I
Right.
think that's a really important
Love
thing
that.
to come to terms with.
Right. Music is so transitory anyways, right? It's a time-based art form. So amazing. Any closing words before we wrap this episode? It's great.
Um, I think your podcasting skills are shit.
If they were so shit, then why did you join me on this show?
To fix you, Ben. I'm here to fix you.
Carl the Fixer. All right, love it.
No, no, no. No, I'm just I will close it. I'll close the episode by just saying I'm so happy to have these conversations. This is so much fun, and I'm still so thankful that you want to be a part of this in the first place.
Aw, I'm so glad that you decided to join me on this venture. It's been fun, and it will continue to be fun, right?
It better, or I'm
It,
out.
it had better, yeah. Or I'm out also.
Bye, Ben.
Bye, Carl.